Hey folks, it's Andrew from Gemba Red, and today we're going to be talking about some very interesting frequently asked questions. But these are questions that come up a lot, or maybe you've thought about. They're very helpful if you are shopping for panels, or if you already have a panel from any manufacturer. This will be very important and very helpful for you to understand. Basically, the frequently asked question is, how long do LEDs last? And if a LED bulb dies or fails or burns out, can you replace it? And that's a very good question. You know, it kind of goes back to where we have light bulbs that if a light bulb dies, then you just screw in a new light bulb. With LEDs, it's not so simple. So we're answering the second part of the question first. LEDs, it's not so simple because LEDs don't really come as a bulb. They're really just a small circuit board component, you know, and basically there's two terminals, a positive and a minus, and you solder it onto a circuit board. So, you know, most people don't have soldering irons, they don't have soldering tools, you don't want to break something down, and even if it's definitely possible, so that's why when people ask me, they say, Andrew, can I, you know, replace the bulbs on my own panel? I'm like, not really, you know, because are you really going to take apart your panel, you know, pull out the circuit board, maybe use a multimeter and find which one failed, and then, you know, heat it up, remove the broken LED, solder in a new LED. You know, there's definitely a lot of good YouTube videos on how to repair electronics, how to solder things. I'm not going to teach you how to do that. I don't have very good technique. But there's plenty of DIY videos that'll teach you soldering techniques and how to remove components from circuit boards and how to solder things in if you want to go that level. But most people, you know, if they ask me and they say, hey, you know, I want to repair a panel, I say, no, you know, you got to send it back to me. And that's, you know, the important kind of crux of the issue is that, you know, we're looking at a panel right here. This comes from a Juve, actually. It's a first generation Juve. And my friend Lisa Patterson from TTG Fitness asked me, she said, Andrew, I want to buy one of your body light panels. You know, she noticed I started selling them. And I said, well, don't you already have a Juve? You know, what's wrong with your Juve? And this is what I do all day. I turn people away from business. You know, why wouldn't I just sell her a panel? I'm like, just use it. What's wrong with your Juve? Other than the flicker and EMFs and stuff, it should work fine. And she says, well, two of the sections aren't working. Two of the sections burnt out. And I was like, well, why don't you send it in for warranty service? Why don't you send it in for repair? And you know, she was like, well, it's past warranty. I said, yeah, but, you know, most reputable, you know, electronics manufacturers, whether it's a computer or, you know, LED devices or whatever, you might be able to contact them and say, hey, it's past warranty, but can you quote me for repair services? So, you know, even for Gemba Red, if you have a panel that breaks past warranty, let me know. And, you know, I can probably repair it for a small fee if you know, just getting the right components and maybe swapping them in. You know, so let your manufacturers know. Again, it doesn't matter if you're Juve or Gemba Red or whoever, even if you're past warranty, let them know it's malfunctioned. And I told her, I said, you don't want to be running a panel while it's malfunctioning. Let's take a look real quick. So once the camera finishes adjusting, if it does, I'll just lay it flat. You can see there's 3 panels that are working, 3 that are fully dead. And obviously, not to be confused, some of the LEDs are the invisible near infrared, and that's a common frequently asked question too, is that, you know, some of the LEDs are invisible, so they look like nothing's going on, but they're actually emitting invisible wavelengths. That's a common question. But anyway, these 2 obviously have failed. There's no red or infrared working over here. So that's a problem. You know what happened? And that's kind of the big question of, well, what happened to these panels or these sections of the panel that made it fail. And I asked her how she uses it. She runs her gym. She says she runs about 7 hours a day, using it as kind of some extra red ambient light. But I calculated it. She said she was only using it for a year. She was doing about 7 hours a day. And she said after a year, the first panel died. First section died. And, I did the math. 7 hours a day, let's say 365 days. That worked out to only 2,555 hours. And, if you notice, most manufacturers are saying 50,000 hours of life, of estimated life from an LED. So normally you read that 50,000 hours and you'd be pretty reassured, because technically, if you do the math on that, you should be able to run a panel continuously for 5.5 years straight. Continuously 24/7 for 5.5 years, and technically that's under 50,000 hours. So something doesn't add up if most manufacturers, including me, that's why nobody else talks about this. We say 50,000 hours. That's kind of an industry standard for LEDs. But again, it's kind of like when you buy a car. And you say, how many miles is this car going to last? And it depends on a lot of factors, right? With LED panels, you've got the LEDs themselves, and usually, they're very simple components, very simple devices that can last a long time. As long as they're in a good environment, there's not a lot of moisture, not a lot of humidity, not too much, not too high of a temperature they don't like, maybe not too much dust or whatever. So it's about the environment too. So I can't always predict how long an LED is going to last. Depends on what your circumstances is. Maybe in a gym, it's relatively higher temperature, it's more humid because people are sweating around it. So those are important factors that might accelerate the death of it. So some people say, oh, I want to hang a panel in my bathroom, which might seem convenient because you're naked and you're showering, and then maybe you do your red light. But bathroom has a lot of heat and humidity, and could seep into it and kind of wreak some havoc on it. And so that 50,000 hour number is kind of an estimate. It's kind of an average. So some products might fail more than 50,000 hours, some might fail under 50,000 hours. There's no special timer in here that makes it explode at 50,000 hours, right? That doesn't make sense. So we know as an engineer, you can test 1,000 different panels, let them run forever until failure, and then you learn some statistics about what the average failure time will be. Then you've got more components. You don't just have LEDs. You've got drivers. This is a power adapter that converts AC to DC for the LEDs. So you've got these drivers, or some, you might call it a power adapter, because it also regulates kind of the voltage and the current that goes to the LEDs. What if this fails? What's the lifespan on this? And then so a lot of panels use fans. What happens if the fan fails? A lot of people criticize Gemba Red. A lot of panels, of our panels, we don't use fans because it's just an extra component. It creates EMFs, and what happens when it fails? Well, your other components will fail because they'll overheat. These are three things. And then once you add more fancy electronics, all the Bluetooth controls that companies are doing, Wi-Fi controls, fancy timers and displays and all this stuff, the fancier you get, the more components you add, that's more statistical probability that each individual component could fail. So again, they're kind of saying, oh, the LEDs can last 50,000 hours, and maybe that's true, but you got a lot of other components going on. You got to worry about your environment too. So more components and environment. And these are good tips to think about. Make sure you're replacing your panels in the right areas and thinking about these things. And so, Lisa had these malfunctions and she was still using it. I said, don't use it anymore, because you don't know what kind of failure happened inside of here. The whole thing could be energized. You could electrocute yourself, or it could be creating extra heat. There's some sort of inefficient, electronic situation happening, creating more heat, overheating. Could cause a fire. You know what I mean? So you could electrocute yourself, you could cause a fire. So as soon as you see any malfunction in a panel, again, even with Gamba Red products, it can happen. Keep an eye out and contact your manufacturer. Ask them, say, hey, something's funky going on. Even if you're not sure, say, hey, something's funky going on. Can you help it out? Should I still be using it? And so I practice precaution. I tell people to be as safe as possible. So if you have a malfunction, contact your manufacturer. Probably stop using it until you get some clarity or you can repair it. So that's another important point. Then, so I was talking with Lisa, and she said she got a quote from Juve for repair costs. Because like I said, it was past warranty, so she just had to pay for a repair fee. But she also has to pay for shipping back to Juve. And even inside of America, she was saying, the shipping back to Juve was like $60 or $90. It was too much. So when you add the cost of shipping plus the repair costs, and she's, I think she had to pay shipping both ways. She was like, it's not worth, it's not worth all the hassle. She didn't have a box, she didn't want to ship it. And you need to think about, even if your panel's under warranty or not, what's your plan when, if you spent $1,000 on a panel or more, what's your plan if it malfunctions and you have to pay to ship it, even for warranty service, you have to pay for the shipping. Usually, that's the policy for most companies. And you got a big heavy thing like this, it'll cost you. It'll cost a lot. And that's why I don't do international shipping. Because I don't want people to have these big panels, and even if in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, however long my panels last, I don't want people in other countries contacting me saying, hey, I need repair service, and then it turns out to be hundreds of dollars just to ship it back and forth, and they're not going to be very happy with that. So I think about the long run, not just making short-term money. So you need to think about that. Obviously, I encourage people to shop local, and then if you're trying to save a buck and shop on Alibaba or even some of the kind of drop ship companies or resellers on Amazon, where are your panels going for repairs? You're not going to ship your panel back to China for a repair, and that's kind of what the situation was here. If you buy from Alibaba, you have to be ready to kind of troubleshoot it and service it yourself, essentially. And I know, some manufacturers on Alibaba, if I know certain components have failed and I tell them, hey, you sold me a dud power driver or the LEDs are already busted, and they send me a replacement for that component, and then I pop it in. And so Lisa was telling me, I was like, well, I know the supplier that can help me out and send me the replacement panels, and I don't know what it was, so I had them send me replacement panel sections. I had them send me the replacement drivers. I'm going to replace the fans. And maybe I'll probably replace all the drivers, and that'll reduce the flicker. That could be another topic for future kind of DIY is if you bought, a high flicker panel from Juve or from Escrow or most of the other companies, if you're really savvy, you could get replacement drivers that are lower flicker and plug them in. It takes, like I said, it takes more electronics skill, and you don't want to create an unsafe situation if you plug something in wrong, but it's a possibility. We could talk about that in the future. So that's where we're at with this panel and with the situation. So we went over kind of, how long the LEDs last. They say 50,000 hours. I say 50,000 hours, but you have to understand the holistic view and you have to understand the environment. Warranty, think about shipping costs and think about after warranty, you might still be able to get repair services. It would be a really big shame, this nice big piece of metal would just get thrown in a dumpster when I know I could repair it. I think about kind of the long-term environmental impact. I want these things going to landfill, and that's why I offered Lisa to help repair these. So, I didn't want her to just throw it out. I thought I could fix it for her. So we think about that. We think about, can we upgrade or repair certain components? It's possible if you're savvy enough. So there's a lot of FAQs that I think are kind of in the back of people's minds. And if you have a panel or you're thinking about buying a panel, these are important considerations. And then, like I said, if you're buying from Alibaba or wherever, keep in mind if something goes wrong with it, you're not going to ship it back to China. You might need to think about how you're going to troubleshoot it and how to repair it. And I think that's fun for me, to learn how to repair things and get components and swap them out. But you need to think about, do you want to pay more, to a local company that can service for you, or pay less and take a little bit of a gamble with going abroad. So, like I said, I showed you the panel. Only 3 sections work. I'm going to tear it down, swap in a bunch of components, and then we'll come back and take a look at how successful I was. And I did measure the flicker on this beforehand. It was about 30% according to my Radix Lupin. That's very high, and a lot of people, when they realized that the flicker was so high on these first generation panels, were pretty upset with that. And obviously I measured the intensity, nowhere close to 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared. So that was always kind of a problem with how they market it. But I'm going to swap in a bunch of components, at least knock down that flicker to very low, and we'll go from there. So now that we have it opened up, we see the fans are completely busted and almost like somehow got broken out and detached, and that's highly likely the failure mode, that the fans started to detach, but maybe there's multiple failure modes, and then they can't provide adequate cooling and the LEDs overheat and they burn out, or kind of something like that. And then we see the drivers. These are just standard power drivers. You can see the logo of their manufacturer right there, which is the same logo for the new ones they sent me. And then we get down here to the fans that were still working, and there's a ton of dust. Look at all this dust. Look at this, nasty. So again, you got to take care of these things. They're going to get gummed up with dust, and that could be how they break, or they get clogged up and then the dust gets into the components, it gets in the drivers, it gets into the LEDs and could short them out. So, blow them out almost like your computer. You get that canned air that you use to blow out your computer. Maybe you need to blow out your fans every once in a while. Are companies telling you about this? No, probably not. So, definitely keep this in mind. Give your fans a little bit of attention and blow them out every once in a while. Otherwise you get dust everywhere, and you don't want dust accumulating and growing little dust mites or mold. Okay? So I don't think I'll be able to finish this today because the new circuit boards are actually a bit oversized compared to the old circuit boards that the manufacturer sent me. So this won't fit in to the smaller area, and the LEDs won't line up with the holes. So it won't work right now. I'll have to see if they can make me the older style with the LEDs closer together. It's a good design point that it's the same number of LEDs in both of these sections, but it looks like over time they decided to space out the LEDs a little bit more, so that gives them a little bit more room to cool. If you space them out, gives them more area, and the more surface area you have, that's the more cooling that you can get, especially when you have a fan. So I'll have to see if they can kind of replicate some replacement panels for this, because it's the LEDs on these panels definitely died, so I'd rather just replace the whole thing. But I wired it up. I've got a new fan. I've got the new section here, and just to show, we can wire it up. We've got the new driver in, new fans running, and the new section will run. We can definitely finish this out. I just need to finish up for today. So, but that's another important small consideration, is how companies are designing them, and maybe they learned from experience or from some issues that maybe they should space out their LEDs a little bit more so they can get a little bit better cooling, and that can help the LEDs last longer too. So it's sometimes some small design considerations. Companies are starting to think this stuff through, make sure their stuff lasts longer. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully that answered a bunch of questions, and maybe follow me on Instagram or Facebook if I post an update when we finish this out. All right, thanks for tuning in.